I will talk about a Japanese software company called Freee, and you can best think of it as a Japanese version of Australian accounting business Zero, which is quite well established and has done wonderfully for investors, at least over the very long run. And the reason I think Free is interesting right now is a combination of Japan being extremely cheap in terms of the valuation multiples compared to other regions, but also I think misplaced concerns that Free is going to get disrupted and software being commoditized, thanks to generative AI. Just quickly, just know that this should not be taken as investment advice, purely for information and educational purposes. Speak to financial advisor before making any investment decisions. So let's talk about SaaS companies then in Japan. This is not just Free coming down in terms of the share price. In fact, the entire market has come off significantly. And I think Free itself is down about 30% year to date, almost at least. And that's also true for many other Japanese software companies. And the trigger was really Claude coming up with several new features that really automate code creation and software generation, software development. But we're now at a point when investors have almost panic sold, and it felt like in February 2026 we saw an almost complete panic in the industry, with many stocks falling almost 10% in a single day. Some of these stocks have stabilized a little bit, but I think they're still down almost 30% year to date, at least when it comes to Free. This quote here comes from a Twitter account of a Japanese-based Substack author and former portfolio manager called Made in Japan. He said that an interesting thing I heard is that some Japanese portfolio managers are being actively told company-wide not to touch anything software or IT related in a broad sense at all. So this tells you the sentiment on the ground in Tokyo. Portfolio managers are extremely scared of touching anything software related. And for good, I mean, you can understand why. It's been a terrible few years, not just the last downturn, but also before that. We've had a 4-year decline in share prices after the COVID growth deceleration, post-COVID growth deceleration we saw in software. So the big question, of course, is generative AI. And the question is, to what extent will software be commoditized? And in this presentation, I will make the case that enterprise software will probably be fine, whereas point solution software might well be screwed, to use a crude term, because you can now vibe code simple software like note-taking apps and so on very easily, and almost customize them. You can also customize them to your own liking. But enterprise software is different, especially systems of record. And I have 6 reasons why I think this sector is worth looking at right now. First is the fact that AI, that it really stands for probabilistic computing. The software uses probabilities to generate code, and these tend to be approximately right, but not always right. And that means that AI generated code is suitable for some applications like summaries or maybe visualization of data, but not necessarily when the software is mission critical and it has to be correct. Quality control is really why you buy these bigger software suites. And in Japan, more so than anywhere, nobody gets fired for buying Bugyo Cloud or buying Free, because this is the way to reduce career risk, and a company will not go for anything vibe coded unless it's absolutely has the reputation and the quality control that's necessary. Second, I think there are several parts of the software business that doesn't just include coding. It's also about designing the user interface to make it intuitive. It's about sales, customer support. It's about maintenance, ongoing maintenance, and cybersecurity. If any of these are missing, I think the business could well be at risk. And I think if software gets commoditized, I personally think it will get commoditized to maybe 50% or maybe 70% productivity improvements. But then the other areas will become relatively more important. And there are lots of vibe-coded software from platforms like Lovable that are online, but they haven't really reached customers because nobody pays attention to them. So distribution matters just as much. Third, I think that enterprise SaaS, they sit on proprietary data. In Free's case, it's a enterprise resource planning system, by the way. They sit on about 500,000 companies' financial data with daily transactions going in and out every single day. That data is proprietary, and nobody can really copy that. You would need to have connections with more than 1,000 types of financial accounts, bank accounts, and so on. And in fact, the people who sit on the data can use AI tools to visualize it or to otherwise make use of that data. So the bargaining power sits with the platform itself, in my view. And I think there are moats. I mean, there are several moats, including high switching costs. Data is hard to migrate. You can't migrate the data away from Freee. You can only migrate the financial statements from the accounting platform. But the rest is just not possible to migrate. Employees, there are training costs if you want to switch systems. And there are also bundled services that add to the feature set. And if you need one of these services, you will be less likely to switch away from the total platform. Not to speak of certification and compliance cycles. Number 5, I think that Japan is very early in its digitalization journey. The majority of companies still use Excel or pen and paper. So this is far too early to say that there will be disruption away from cloud services, which in fact is, they haven't even, been properly used yet or become popularized. Finally, in Japan, unlike the US, share count dilution is minimal. So in Free's case, there's 0 share count dilution. So growth of about 30% per year really benefits the minorities, I think. So this is a very busy slide, but my key takeaway here is that point solutions could well be screwed. But enterprise resource planning systems like SAP and Freee, I think are most likely just fine.